How's your chili?
Pretty bad.
That's my favorite kind.
There couldn't have been a more contrasting result between a fantastic premise and a disappointing execution. We get to see Max in his younger years and the story of how he met Verdona and was recruited by the plumbers. Imagine my surprise when it turns out to be one of the dullest episodes of the entire 220 episode run. Max runs into Verdona to save her from the Synthroid's pursuit, who wants to use her to power his home planet. The framing of this episode, which involves the trio helping Max clean out the rust bucket, prompting him to tell a flashback story by one of their findings, is pretty unique to Ben 10. Everything else about the episode is not. I really wanted to like this episode, but it feels like it gave me nothing. This episode seems to be a blend of a bunch of tropes and references without anything separating it from what it's imitating, notably the Terminator. An episode hasn't felt this disconnected from the appeal of Ben 10 since Ben 4 Good Buddy. There are no surprises, no secrets uncovered, no decent alien action, no setup for something to come. I'm struggling to find the right words to phrase this, but this episode feels very empty. Even without all those factors I just mentioned, as a self-contained story, it's just kinda monotonous. Also, Max can apparently activate Verdona's telepathic link on his own accord to the point where he can see visions of her location. That's just too out there. The return of Labrid was nice, but also screws with the timeline of the plumbers even more when you think about it. I liked Jason Marsden's portrayal of young Max. You can see a lot of where present-day Max's attitude comes from.
You've been cited repeatedly for insubordination.
Only when my commanding officers were wrong.
It is a little charming to see him brag about going to space unknowingly to an alien, and the fact that he's unfazed by the Synthroid's real explanation.
Oh. Well, why didn't you say so?
Young Max is probably the only redeeming part of the episode, although he still can't save the story. The Synthroid is boring, there's no getting around it. His voice is the same as any other robot we've heard in UAF, and of course he's got laser powers.
That weapon is not powerful enough to harm me.
Oh, but getting smacked in the face with a crowbar is? Verdona, while interesting in her debut episode, doesn't have any of those qualities here. And while you could say it's because it's a younger version of her, that still doesn't make her character as interesting as what we've seen previously. We've also seen a lot of pretty impressive CG implemented in the series, but these cars are the opposite end of the spectrum. Even the sound design and pacing felt off.
He had it coming.
The animation isn't that noteworthy either. Every location feels the most desaturated and blue that UAF has ever felt, aside from the copper smelting building, although now it's just a red-tinted version of any other warehouse we've seen. Every character looks uninspired and the bare bones of what they could be. When people say the UAF art style is bland, this episode is a prime example. Although some shots do look pretty good, like the air fight in the beginning, we're not watching Ben 10 to watch a military airplane battle. Young Max looking similar to his classic child self is a nice callback though. While you could argue there's a semblance of importance, since it sets up young Max joining the plumbers and shows how he met Verdona, you have to admit that doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, and it's also rarely discussed in the fandom. This episode simply adds on an extra bit of history for Max, but Max is still a great, well-rounded character without this forgettable episode. Overall, it's not horrible, but it's one of the most uninteresting episodes of the franchise, and for Max's origin, I just wish we got something more unique and exciting. It felt like every story piece was a cookie-cutter aspect of exactly what you'd expect and zero standard Ben 10 flavor. When you escape the fact that this is Max's origin as a plumber and see it for what it is, I doubt anyone has anything worth saying about this episode once the credits start rolling.
Good night, Verdona. Wherever you are.